This is the Ebb and Hawk podcast.
Hello there, welcome to the Ebb and Hawk, a podcast discussing Star Wars news and Knights of the Old Republic. Today we'll recap the Swoop race and beginning of the end of Taris. So a spoiler alert for the Knights of the Old Republic series and the Star Wars films and TV shows. This is where the Bad Robot Productions begins. So take us away, Cassia, for our first topic.
Okay, so today we are going to be recapping the Swoop race where we left off up to going into the Sith base. So, yeah, it's interesting because I feel like Taris takes up a whole lot of the game, but it'll just be interesting to see how much a movie or adaptation stays there. So, where we last left off, you were going to explode. You have a Swoop bike that's been kind of souped up with a accelerator. You stole it from the Black Vulkars, and you don't know how many rides this Swoop bike has in it. That's why you have to win in just a few amount of times, because if you do go too many runs, it does explode. The rules of Swoop racing are pretty straightforward. You just avoid debris in the lanes, and you hit the accelerators and switch engines before you overheat. And one interesting thing is, you can see Bastila in a cage in a ridiculous outfit, and you're just like, that's cool, she's there, I'm going to just race, and it's kind of funny because when you just walk up to everyone's like, you're a rookie. They drive that fact home so many times, and apparently the time to beat is 38.43 seconds, and it's like, okay. And keep in mind, when I was playing, this is my first playthrough since, middle school, I think, or high school, and my time was 31:03, so I was very happy with myself, and then someone got a better time than me, so I'm like, oh my gosh, I have to do this again. And then I did it again, and I got 36 seconds, and I was like, seriously? How did I get worse? But then I kind of just was like, okay, just be calm. You know how to do this. You've done it before. And then I got 26 seconds, and I won. So then you win, and then Brejik, who is the leader of the Black Vulkars, he has a familiar voice actor, but I'm just not sure who it is. So if you know who it is, let me know. Because I'm like, I've heard this guy before. So Brejik, he's like, this person cheated. And it's like, you're a liar, even though you're kind of telling the truth. It's just, I stole the cheating method from you. So does that really make me a cheater, But then Bastila uses this time to break out. And she uses a double-bladed sword. There's a full-on gang war. And then all the Black Vulkars are dead. Brejik's dead. And just as Bastila's saying, maybe they'll think twice about taking on a Jedi, she sees you, and she's about to be like, I recognize you. You are... And then she says, a soldier, which kind of feels like a cover on the Underspire. That's how I recognize you. And you have the dialogue option to say, I'm blank. I'm here to save you. That's a callback to A New Hope, but I kind of think they kind of saved each other in that instance, but they will always argue about who saved who. And she figures out that Karth is alive, and she's very happy. And they're kind of reunited work buddies, I would say. And then you have another vision of Bastila where she says you cannot win Revan, and you kind of see more of the strike team behind her. Then you wake up and you're in the apartment, and Bastila's kind of like, whoa, have you not, like, made a plan to get off the planet yet? Like, what have you guys been doing? And Karth and Revan are kind of like, we've been trying to rescue you. And Bastila's like, okay, I'm just gonna take over this group project now and make sure it's getting off to a good start, you know? And she's also like, sorry, sometimes I'm rash as a Jedi. The Council doesn't like that, you know? But I kind of got a little bit of a Rex and Ahsoka vibe. Karth is Rex and Ahsoka is kind of like Bastila to an extent, like where Rex kind of tells Ahsoka that experience outranks everything. Like, do you kind of see that?
I don't know. I can see a little bit of Bastila being kind of like Ahsoka, but I think Ahsoka is like a huge outlier in that aspect where Bastila isn't quite like that. Backpedaling a little bit. Ahsoka has a lot in common with Anakin Skywalker.
Yeah.
And I just don't think that Bastila quite is that far, but maybe it has like a little bit of kind of like those naive tendencies.
It's not like I see Ahsoka and Bastila are like exactly alike, but it's just like the Karth and Bastila dynamic where they're kind of like, where you kind of meet them at the beginning of Knights of the Old Republic. It's kind of more like they're forced like to work with each other due to the circumstances. They're kind of just like work acquaintances, and Ahsoka is kind of a little bit uppity as a Jedi and kind of thinks like she knows how to run the group project better than everyone and is just going to take over, you know? And Karth is kind of like the Rex who has experience like fighting the war. So he kind of knows how to deal with people, like, and work together as a team. Bastila is smart and talented, but she just kind of doesn't have the, I would say, social skills and like kind of like the leadership experience. So that's kind of how I see that dynamic. Revan can act as a mediator, but it would be kind of interesting to see this trio on screen. And we've kind of talked about our Revan fan cast and our Karth and Bastila fan cast, but it'd be cool to see these personalities at work, because I think they would bounce off of each other and there would be like some conflict and it would be interesting.
Yeah, I know with my playthrough, I definitely kind of got Karth alienated, where, yeah, I would have Revan. Well, Revan kind of just did his own thing. So what ended up happening was my Bastila would end up kind of being the mediator on like my playthrough, because I was pretty extreme and Karth was like a dead weight kind of. And so like my playthrough kind of had a little bit of that butting heads.
Because you have that vision, Bastila kind of senses you have a vision as well. You can kind of tell that in the back of her mind, she's like kind of going, oh crap, oh crap, oh crap, oh crap. How am I going to kind of lie my way out of this one? This isn't supposed to be happening. We weren't really supposed to be talking this much. And she just kind of has to be like, the Masters and Council on Dantooine will know what to do if you are Force sensitive. And any coincidences or patterns you see, it's due to the Force, and the Force is unknowable. So just don't question it.
What's that complex of the it goes either way, but like of the
Stockholm syndrome?
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't quite think that's what's going on here, but I mean, Star Wars is a bit more of like a fairy tale that plays with psychology, but not necessarily psychological realism. But yeah. Once you get out of the apartment, there's an alien that comes up to you, and he says, hey, you're the person who won the swoop race. Canderous Ordo is looking for you. So you go to the Upper City Cantina, and Canderous Ordo says, hey, you're someone who knows how to get results. I'm someone who's working for Davik Kang. He's not paying me what he promised me. So what I want to do is get off of this rock and break the Sith quarantine. And Karth is kind of like, ooh, I don't feel good about this. Bastil's like, I don't sense any deception from him. So you kind of just listen to what Candace has to say. And he says, I want to steal the Sith launch codes, or else if you try to leave in a ship, you'll be destroyed by guns. He says, after you do that, I'll provide Davik's flagship, the Ebon Hawk, which, I don't know. I've never heard of that. How do you pronounce it? Is it Ebon? The Ebon Hawk? I don't know. It's a dumb name.
The Ebon Hawk?
Yeah. It's probably Ebon Hawk.
Ebon Hawk?
We'll never hear about it again. So...
The Ebon Hawk?
Yeah. Yeah, something like that. Davik's flagship.
One of those
ships, you know. And Candace tells you to get into the Sith base, to get past the security systems, you're going to need an astromech. Janice Null, go to her shop. She'll have an astromech that can get you into the Sith base. And Candace is recognizable, so he can't do the Sith base thing on his own, but I guess that's good for you, because then you're able to get off the planet. And Candace tells you, I'll let you do that. I'll let you do the work I need, and I'll just be chilling at Javar's cantina once you have the codes. And it's like, okay, that's great. Maybe when you arrive down there, he'll buy appetizers. Like, you know, maybe he'll get chips and guacamole or something. So as you're kind of walking around, Bastila and Karth are kind of talking to each other. And Karth is like, how did you get captured by the Black Vulkars? And Bastila's like, well, I was exhausted, you know. My battle meditation made it so most of the crew was able to get off, you know. And then he's like, but really, like, how did they capture you? I've seen Jedi with lightsabers. And she's kind of like, the lightsaber, you know, was misplaced. And in an adaptation, I'm just going to say this now, that I think it kind of breaks Star Wars rules, but it would be hilarious if, like, while Karth and Bastila are talking, you see a flashback, and it's kind of like, you see, like, Bastila kind of, like, stumbling out, like, and it's, like, out of the escape pod, kind of, like, woozy, you know? And then it's like, where's my lightsaber? And then it's just, like, she's tasered by a Black Vulcar. Like, I think that could be funny. So, it might...
She's just sleepy. She needed to take a nap, and then she wakes up and all her stuff's stolen, and she's in a cage.
Yeah. I mean, it happens to the best of us. So, Karth says, okay, like, maybe just don't mention it to your Jedi Council. And she's like, agreed. And Karth asks her, like, 5 years ago, when Revan and Malak decided to fight against the Mandalorians, like, did you ever think, like, you should have joined them? And she's like, I was an apprentice then. My battle meditation hadn't manifested itself yet. And when you kind of listen to Bastila, she's kind of just like, when you listen to her, she's always kind of like talking about the Jedi Council and like how they are so wise and like know everything. And I got this comment from Paulino Medici, who says, like, Bastila's arc is the evolution of a character from a person blindly faithful to the Jedi Code and the Jedi Council to a person who rethinks everything. And I think that's a great comment, and it's very true, because I think Bastila most overtly kind of has, like, an identity quest, like, she's trying to find who she is in the Force, you know? And you kind of just see that she's kind of just spouting dogma, where you kind of don't quite see her as an Anakin. I can kind of see that, but what I think is, like, she's kind of more of an Anakin type, but she kind of covers it up by being a teacher's pet and trying to be like an Obi-Wan on the outside. So that's kind of how I see Bastila.
If anything, it's like before Anakin started to get, like, tired of rejection. So, like, before things like Mace Windu declining his seat as a master on the council, and kind of like the long, grueling training that probably was a lot longer than most other Jedi Padawans and apprentices.
So you kind of see that tension where, I mean, the game is just beginning, but she's always like talking about how she looks up to the Jedi Council, but as the game progresses, you kind of like see how maybe it's kind of like be like a boss and an employee, where like the employee is trying to progress, but the boss is kind of holding them back, saying you're not ready, and like at a certain point, like the employee is probably ready, but the boss doesn't trust them, you know? So sometimes that like leads to like burnout, you know, or falling to the dark side.
Foreshadowing at its finest.
Yeah. So like it's really not a surprise if anyone's gonna turn to the dark side, it's gonna be Bastila. But Karth and Bastila's conversation, it does kind of bring some questions to mind, like, were Revan and Malak always going to turn to the dark side, you know? Like, if the Jedi Council were with them, if they were supported, would they have had, like, more support and not feel like they had to turn their back on being a Jedi, you know? Like, I'm not necessarily taking the Old Republic into account, but it's kind of like the Mandalorian Wars. I would definitely say they're more like in line with World War II, where it's like, it's a war that like, you never really want to fight any war, but it's probably more necessary than like a war like Vietnam, you know? And maybe the Jedi Council did have their reasons because they'd just like been involved in Sith wars, and they lost a lot of Jedi to the dark side, and like some Jedi just like died, you know? And it was a period of like where they're trying to like redefine who they are, so that didn't happen again. So they were being cautious because people do fall to the dark side fighting wars, and that is what happened. But sometimes those questions that you can't really answer but just think about like can be interesting. Sometimes it's fun to like have those conversations that like develop characterizations, and you kind of like get to know the group dynamics, and it helps build the world. It's nice. But as you kind of like have Bastila in your group, you kind of see that her stats aren't the best. And I kind of think that's just so, like, she's not so overpowered on Taris, but I'm kind of confused as to why she's not a counselor, because I think it would make more sense for Jolie to be a sentinel and her a counselor, because she has battle meditation, but maybe part of it is, like, she's very close to her treasure hunting father, so maybe, like, her becoming a sentinel was kind of like keeping a connection there. And I guess battle meditation can happen to anyone, you know, but if you do look in the KOTOR stat book, she does have a few levels of like consular in her. But yeah, yellow lightsabers are cool and more people should have them.
I'm a consular. I'm all about that green.
I'm about yellow and sometimes blue. One thing before we went into the Sith base, there was a guy named Gorton Kolu, and he's talking about a great plague sweeping Taris, and I'm like, cool. Well, that's not topical at all, you know, but he was talking about a metaphorical plague, not a literal plague, because I guess he doesn't like aliens, and he was starting the Anti-Alien League, so I was just like, that's stupid, so don't do that.
Yeah, you could really take that reference in a few different ways, because yeah, there was kind of like the racist dynamic of Taris, but then there was the rat ghoul problem that was kind of spreading at least everywhere in the lower levels, but you know, it's possible that it could make its way up.
But when you listen to him, he's not talking about the rat ghoul plague. Like, he's talking about, like, he's like, oh, the Rhodians, the Ithurians, the Twi'leks, they're sweeping across Taris, so it's like he's not talking about the rat ghoul plagues, it's just more like aliens he doesn't like. Don't do that. The more you dig around Taris, you're kind of like, wow, nothing's really changed. So, But yeah, when you go into Janice Null's shop, she sells you T3M4. And T3M4 is not much of a character in KOTOR 1, I would say. He becomes more of a character in KOTOR 2.
Don't forget, she sells you the other unit, and then you yell at her and be like, "This one has a bad motivator. Look!" And then you get the other one.
Yeah, that was during this playthrough. I wasn't given T3 Hate, like T3H8. I wasn't given him. I was just given T3M4 off the bat. So I haggled the price down from 2,000 to 1,500 credits. And yeah, I was just given T3M4, and you just saw like T3H8, and it's like he's broken. So I don't know what happened in that playthrough, but that parallel didn't happen with A New Hope. But yeah, it was weird. So you get to...
I think if you go for the droid early, it does that sequence.
Oh, okay. So then you go to the Sith military base, and it just kind of, when you get there, the Sith base music starts playing, and it brought me back to episode 32 when we were kind of talking about the music. It really sounds a whole lot like the Emperor's theme, so it's a cool detail. Having a character with a lightsaber is awesome. And a medium-length story short, you go in, you beat up a bad robot, and you also defeat a Sith governor. And then you get the codes, and just a word of warning, just make sure you go to the armory before any of your big fights, take down the turrets in the elevator, and med packs do not work on droids. Just in case you're wondering, they don't. And up your demolitions on T3, they'll come in handy. And that's how you get out. So you get in, you get out, you have the codes. And in our next episode, we will recap the end of Taris. We'll get to the Ebon Hawk, and we'll leave, and it'll be awesome. So let's just take a quick break, and we'll talk about how we would handle this section cinematically. We just wanted to take a quick break to ask you, our listeners, to subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts and to leave us a 5-star review. And although we do not always agree, Your Honor, our two great societies have always lived in peace, listener and podcasters. If we do not act quickly, all will be lost forever. I ask you to help us. No, I beg you to help us. Please give us a 5-star review if you think we've deserved it. Our fate is in your hands. And then I can't really do the boss nass thing, so we'll just end that Padme Amidala from the Phantom Menace quote there, and we'll just move on to our next topic.
Well, welcome back, everybody. So now that we've gone over just kind of the last little bit of the Taris Sith base, we're going to talk about how we would handle this cinematically. So, Cassia, where would you go from here cinematically?
So where we last left off, we were kind of talking about the race. Maybe Karth could be the one initially driving the swoop. And then maybe Revan is the one who, when a gang war breaks out, he could be the one fighting. And that way, like, Karth and Revan both have something to do, or maybe, like, the swoop does something, or maybe Karth is injured, so Revan has to finish the race. So I was kind of thinking, like, that could happen. It could up the stakes, you know? And just have a swoop race. It could be fun. But I was kind of thinking that I wouldn't have just Bastila in a cage, in a skimpy outfit, like, right there. And you're like, cool, there's Bastila in a cage. I'm just going to race this race. I was kind of thinking, like, of Shattered, the Clone Wars episode from the Siege of Mandalore arc, when Bo-Katan mentioned that there was a Mandalorian vault that was capable of imprisoning Force wielders, And she says it's a relic of a bygone era when Mandalorians had reason to imprison you force-wielding maniacs. So when I was watching Clone Wars, it kind of brought to mind like the neural dampeners that kind of serve that purpose in KOTOR, but I was kind of thinking like it would kind of make sense after a Mandalorian war that maybe a gang has access to one force vault and just have Bastila in her normal outfit, you know, like just maybe kept in there, and then like it's revealed like at the end of the race like she's the prize, and then Brejik's like, no, I have her, and we're just gonna, now that you guys are all in one place, you hidden back, because I'm gonna end you once and for all. And then like the fight breaks out, and then Bastila can be broken out, and then they, you know, Revan and Bastila save each other, and Karth is there, and that's how she could break out. And then I would probably just maybe combine the Sith base and getting the Ebon Hawk, or maybe just like not deal with the Sith base and just get, once Bastila joins your group, I think the faster you're off Taris, the better, just like to keep the story going, you know? And yeah, I think that's how I would handle that section cinematically.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with probably skipping a lot of the Sith base, just the whole Taris sequences, and get the swoop race, kind of have that be kind of like the climactic moment, and then them like shooting or fighting their way to the Ebon Hawk, and then leaving Taris, I think would probably work the best.
Yeah, and maybe like when you kind of bump into Canderous on your quest, maybe Canderous and Revan could like come to an understanding, like, after this race, if I win, you're gonna help me off, I'll help you get off, you know, like, just to kind of like streamline it as much as possible, I think, because you don't want to feel like, wow, we've spent 3/4 of this movie on Taris, like, the audience sometimes gets bored, you know, and I think you want to see the character become a Jedi. Like, you're not meant to stay on Taris, you know, so that's how I'd handle it. But probably our next episode we'll ask our listeners like how much of Taris they would want to see, like if it were a movie or a show. I think like once Bastila joins the Ebon Hawk group chat, like, you wanna, there's not much reason to stay on Taris. It's kind of just like dilly-dallying, you know? And to an extent, like, all of Taris sometimes feels like dilly-dallying because you're not quite a Jedi and you're not fulfilling your quest, you know? So, but I think it does help you kind of establish some of the world building and the stakes and the characterization, so you want some of it, but you don't need to feel like, I think the highest level you can get on Taris is like level 9. But, yeah, you don't need to. In our next episode, we're going to get off Taris, so don't worry.
All right, well, let's take a quick break, and when we get back, we're going to talk about the Legacy Sabers. Recently, and we posted this on Instagram, there was a poll going on for an upcoming release for a new Legacy lightsaber. So this is just found at the Disney Parks blog.
It'll be sold at Galaxy's Edge.
Cassia, have they declared the winner yet?
They haven't projected out of the poll who's going to win yet, but I would be very surprised if Cal Kestis's hilt doesn't win.
Kind of the new design, the new hype, I guess. I've seen both Saberforge and Ultra Sabers release a Cal Kestis lightsaber hilt, and now Disney's getting in on it too.
Yeah, but I think it would be pretty cool I think it's pretty cool that Disney's they're hosting a vote for different sabers to be sold at Doc Undar's. And some of the other hilts featured in this vote, you have Anakin Skywalker, the hilt from Attack of the Clones, which I'm very nostalgic for because my first, like, durable, lightsaber that I was given as a kid was the Anakin Skywalker hilt from Attack of the Clones, And then there's the Qui-Gon Jinn, which is actually in second place. It's just a very nice design. I'm surprised it wasn't made a Legacy hilt already. And then the Ezra Bridger and Kanan Jarrus from Star Wars Rebels, their hilts are in consideration too. But it definitely looks like Cal Kestis is in the lead. And then there's also Lord Corvax's hilt from Vader Immortal in the running. So 6 saber hilts are in consideration, but it looks like Cal Kestis is going to win.
I was going to say I'm a little disappointed in those who voted that I think Qui-Gon should have totally won. But, whatever.
I think it's just like Jedi Fallen Order is very popular, and it's the most recent, I would say. I kind of think we're going to get some Qui-Gon mentions and maybe an appearance in a Kenobi spinoff,
Mm-hmm.
So maybe once that happens, people will start to feel the love for Qui-Gon more, and his hilt will end up being offered. So
I know you're not much into Easter eggs, but I hope in the Kenobi series we do see Qui-Gon's hilt, like, sitting in a drawer or something in Obi-Wan's home.
Yeah, I mean, it could make sense, like, that's where Luke gets his green crystal from. It would be kind of cool continuity, I would say. Because I think Anakin, before he created his own saber, he actually used Qui-Gon's hilt. So it would be kind of a nice connection, I think. But, yeah, I kind of wonder, like, looking at the Lord Corvax saber, that's the one I personally voted for. After I voted, I was kind of thinking, like, actually, is that safe to offer at a theme park? Because it's kind of like a wine opener on the top, and then you have like a pickaxe on the side. So I'm kind of like, would that even fit in the, like, lightsaber holders they give you, at the park? So I was kind of thinking about it, and some of the High Republic hilts kind of look a little bit more like broadsword hilts. So I was kind of wondering if in the future, are they going to sell, like, maybe Dooku's? How do they sell sabers like Kylo Ren's, or that kind of has that, like, cross guard on it, or like Lord Corvax's? Like, would you have to have a special bag to carry it in, or would they kind of modify it, like, so it can, like, hold the light tube in it, kind of play with the dimensions, but kind of keep them intact for the most part? And
they might have to disassemble it, and because the hilt would probably have to be in a box and the blade would be in a sleeve.
When you go to the park, when I put my hilt together, you have a hilt, and then you have the light tube, and they give you, like, a bag. Either if you get a blade like Lord Corvax's, if it were ever to be sold, or like Count Dooku's, where it kind of has, like, a little blade on top of a curved hilt, like, would you have to just send it to your house, or would they give you a special bag, or what? But I was also looking kind of like at the Cal Kestis, at the bottom of his blade, it's kind of broken, and the Kanan Jarrus has, like, a little bit of a pin on the bottom, like, and the Lord Corvax is basically just a pickaxe, like I said, with a wine opener on it. So I'm kind of like, would those be safety hazards? How do you think they would, like, if they were to be sold, like, would they kind of just, like, make the Cal Kestis, like, a little less scrappy? Like, how do you think they would handle that?
Well, I know some of the hilts, they don't come in, like, the full sleeve. They come with in like a special box. And so kind of with what I was saying before, it's possible that they would just give it to you in two pieces where they put the hilt in the box and then they have the blade and it's in that sleeve, that shoulder sleeve. And that's probably what they would do, or it's something that you would just order off of a catalog and then order to ship home. But yeah, I just think it's not a very safe hilt design, something that like technically the Disney could be held liable for the design choice. But
I mean, if someone tripped on the Lord Corvax one, the way it looks in that picture, I'm like, that could be dangerous, you know? And I could be impaled.
More so dangerous without the blade in place than with the blade in place, I think, but still.
Yeah, I mean, I voted for the Lord Corvax one, but then I was kind of thinking about logistically, how would that work, you know?
Yeah, while you were talking, by the way, I opened up all of my different devices and voted Qui-Gon just to spite everyone.
Oh, that's funny.
12 times.
Oh, boy.
Like, in the last 10 minutes.
Yeah. I think this round Cal Kestis is going to win, but Qui-Gon is definitely, in second place. So I think we'll see these sabers in the future, but it's an interesting way to get fans engaged, I would say.
All right, everyone. Well, thank you so much for listening to the Ebon Hawk podcast. Cassia, why don't you get started with our plugs?
All right. So you can find us on Instagram at Ebon Hawk Podcast. If you hit the link in our bio, that holds the best link where you can find our podcast on any platform. And speaking of platforms, the Ebon Hawk can be found on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, as well as everywhere else that Anchor podcasts are distributed. Subscriptions, reviews, and shares help us out immensely. And our email is ebonhawkpodcast@gmail.com. You can email us your comments, questions, and business inquiries.
And then you can find me on Instagram, Twitch, and Twitter. Just by searching Coden with Twitch, just make sure to follow the Twitter for when I tweet out to go live, but typically those are Thursday evenings. And for those that checked in last Thursday, we had a little bit of fun with No Man's Sky, so that was good there. And then our intro and outro themes were composed by Alistair Shorman, and he can be found at alistairsounds.wixsite.com/alistairsounds. Our transition music was composed by Christian Walker, and he can be found at christianwalkermusic.com. This has been the Ebon Hawk Podcast. May the Force be with you. We'll be back soon. Bye for now.